Have you ever caught yourself lying awake at night, replaying conversations, decisions, or even tiny mistakes from the past, wishing you could somehow predict what would happen next? Maybe you find yourself scrolling through options, analyzing every choice, weighing every possible outcome, and still feeling unsure, almost paralyzed by the sheer number of what-ifs. If this sounds familiar, then you know what overthinking feels like. And here's the thing, overthinking isn't just about having a busy mind. Deep down, your mind is trying to do something very specific. It's craving control. It's trying to protect you from uncertainty, from mistakes, from pain. But here's the paradox. The very effort to control everything often leaves you feeling more out of control than ever. Think about it like this. Your brain evolved to predict, plan, and problem solve. That's what kept humans alive for thousands of years. But now, in modern life, the threats are mostly abstract. Relationships, career choices, social perception, personal growth. And yet your brain responds in the same way it would if a predator were chasing you. That means your mind is constantly scanning for danger, obsessing over outcomes, and trying to micro-manage situations that aren't inherently life-threatening. Overthinking becomes a habit because your brain equates thinking through every possible scenario with staying safe, with maintaining control. The problem is, your brain isn't great at distinguishing between real danger and imagined possibilities. Let me give you an example. Imagine you sent a text to someone you care about, maybe a partner, a friend, or even a colleague, and they haven't replied immediately. Overthinkers instantly start running through hundreds of scenarios. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Should I text again? Should I wait? Did I ruin the relationship? Your mind is essentially trying to predict their thoughts, their emotions, and the outcomes of your actions, all at once. And because you can't actually control another person's mind, you feel stuck, anxious, or frustrated. This is the classic trap of overthinking. The desire for control meets the reality of uncertainty, and your brain doesn't like that gap. Now, it's tempting to see overthinking as purely negative, and in many ways, it can be. But it's also a signal. It's a signal that your mind is hyper-aware, that it cares about consequences, and that it's wired to solve problems. The challenge is learning how to channel that energy productively, instead of letting it spiral. One practical way to do this is by recognizing patterns in your thinking. Most overthinking follows predictable cycles. You might ruminate about the past, imagine worst-case scenarios, or replay conversations repeatedly. When you notice these patterns, pause and ask yourself, am I thinking to solve a problem, or am I thinking to avoid discomfort? This subtle distinction is powerful. Problem-solving thinking has a clear purpose, a plan, and actionable steps. Avoidance thinking is just mental noise. Let's go deeper. Overthinking often masks a deeper emotional need. It's rarely about the situation itself. It's about feeling safe, competent, or in control. You might overanalyze an argument with a friend, not because the argument is complex, but because you fear losing connection, fear being judged, or fear being misunderstood. You might overthink a career decision, not because the job is inherently confusing, but because you want certainty, validation, and reassurance. Recognizing this emotional root helps you respond differently. Instead of beating yourself up for thinking too much, you can acknowledge, my mind is trying to protect me. That's okay, but maybe there's a healthier way to do it. Here's a strategy that helps many people externalize your thoughts. Write them down, speak them out loud, or even record your worries as if you're talking to someone else. When you do this, you shift your mind from endless internal loops to something tangible. Once thoughts are externalized, you can examine them more objectively. Which thoughts are based on reality? Which are assumptions? Which are fueled by fear? This simple act of seeing your thoughts gives you more control than trying to wrestle them inside your head. Another powerful insight is learning to tolerate uncertainty. Overthinkers crave control because uncertainty feels dangerous, uncomfortable, or wrong. But life is inherently uncertain. No amount of planning, analyzing, or strategizing can eliminate it. The key is not to eliminate uncertainty. It's to build confidence in your ability to navigate it. Start with small experiments. Make a decision without overanalyzing, and notice that even if things don't go perfectly, you can handle the outcome. Each time you do this, you train your mind to trust you, instead of feeling the constant need to predict and control. And here's something that often surprises people: overthinking is often a form of self-sabotage. It can feel productive, but in reality, it delays action, creates stress, and sometimes erodes your confidence. You might overthink a message to send, an opportunity to take, or even a hobby to pursue, and in the process, the moment passes. Your brain thinks it's keeping you safe, but in reality, it's holding you back. Recognizing this is crucial. Awareness alone doesn't stop overthinking, but it gives you a choice. You can pause, take a breath, and ask, is this thought helping me move forward, or is it keeping me stuck? Now, let's talk about the role of emotions. Overthinking isn't just cognitive, it's deeply emotional. Anxiety, guilt, shame, and fear all fuel the cycle, and often, people who overthink are highly sensitive to both their own feelings and the perceived feelings of others. This sensitivity is a gift. It allows you to connect deeply, but it also makes your mind more prone to spirals. Emotional regulation techniques can help here: deep breathing, mindful awareness, journaling, or even structured reflection where you ask, what am I feeling? Why? And what can I do right now to respond effectively? By separating your emotions from your thoughts, you reduce the intensity of overthinking. Another reflection point: consider the stories you tell yourself. Overthinkers are expert storytellers. They create detailed narratives about what others think, what might happen, and what it all means. The challenge is that these stories are often not reality. They're interpretations, guesses, and sometimes worst-case exaggerations. Questioning the story, examining evidence, and imagining alternative explanations can diffuse the grip of overthinking. For example, instead of thinking, they didn't reply because they're angry with me, you might consider, maybe they're busy, maybe they forgot, or maybe it has nothing to do with me at all. The more you practice this, the less power your thoughts have to dictate your emotional state. One of the most effective ways to break free from overthinking is to shift your focus from outcomes to actions. Overthinking often fixates on what will happen or what could go wrong, but the truth is, you have control only over what you do, not what happens. This shift might sound simple, but it's transformative. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what can I do right now that moves me forward? Instead of obsessing over every possible reaction from someone else, ask, what's the next step I can take that aligns with my values? By anchoring yourself in action, you give your mind something productive to do, and gradually, the need to overanalyze diminishes. Here's another insight. Overthinking often thrives on isolation. When you're alone with your thoughts, they can spiral endlessly. Sharing your thoughts with someone you trust, even if it's just one person, can break that cycle. And I don't mean asking someone to solve your problem. Sometimes that's not helpful. But simply voicing your inner dialogue can provide clarity. Hearing your own words aloud allows you to notice patterns, exaggerations, and unnecessary worries that were invisible when confined to your mind. In psychology, this is called externalization, and it's a remarkably simple yet effective tool against overthinking. Let's take a moment to talk about perfectionism, because it's closely tied to overthinking. Many people overthink because they want to get it right, to avoid mistakes, or to appear competent. But perfection is an illusion. Life doesn't operate in perfect increments. It's messy, unpredictable, and often uncomfortable. The more you chase perfection, the more trapped your mind becomes in endless analysis. Instead, aim for progress. Small, imperfect steps forward matter far more than waiting for the perfect decision. Ask yourself, is this good enough to move forward? And then act. Each small step builds confidence and gradually rewires your mind to tolerate uncertainty. Now, let's talk about the relationship between overthinking and self-trust. At its core, overthinking signals a lack of trust. Trust in yourself, your judgment, and your ability to handle outcomes. Over time, this lack of trust can snowball, making decisions feel overwhelming. Rebuilding self-trust is gradual but possible. Start by honoring your choices, even small ones. Reflect on moments when things turned out fine, despite your worry. Remind yourself, I've handled uncertainty before, I can do it again. Celebrate your ability to adapt, to problem solve, and to learn from mistakes. Overthinking loses its power when you trust yourself to navigate life's unpredictability. Another crucial aspect to consider is your environment. Your surroundings, the people you interact with, and the information you consume all influence how much your mind spins. Constant exposure to social media, news, or highly critical individuals can amplify anxiety and overthinking. Curate your environment to support clarity instead of chaos. Limit triggers, seek positive or calming influences, and create spaces, both physically and mentally, where your thoughts can settle. Sometimes, stepping away from the noise is the most effective way to regain control over your mind. Let's explore a more subtle, often overlooked factor, the mind-body connection. Overthinking doesn't exist only in the head, it manifests physically. Tension in your shoulders, shallow breathing, racing heart, insomnia. These are all signals your body sends when your mind is overactive. Mindfulness, movement, and breathwork aren't just nice extras. They are powerful tools to reset your nervous system, telling your brain that you're safe even when thoughts are racing. Even 5 minutes of focused breathing, walking, or stretching can reduce the mental chatter significantly. The more you integrate these practices into your daily routine, the less your mind will feel the need to overthink for protection. Now, one of the hardest truths about overthinking is that there is no complete solution. Your mind will never be perfectly calm, and uncertainty will always exist. But here's the liberating part. The goal isn't to stop thinking, it's to learn to think with intention. You want your thoughts to serve you, not control you. Treat your mind like a powerful tool instead of a demanding tyrant. Use reflection, journaling, conversation, and action to guide it, rather than being trapped in endless loops. Over time, you'll notice that the urge to overthink diminishes because your mind feels safe, competent, and capable of handling life's unpredictability. Let's talk briefly about relationships, because overthinking often magnifies social anxiety and fear of judgment. In friendships, romantic relationships, and even professional settings, overthinkers tend to analyze every word, tone, or gesture. While careful observation can be helpful, obsessive analysis erodes spontaneity and connection. A practical approach is to focus on clarity and communication instead of prediction. If something bothers you, ask, If you're unsure, clarify. This isn't about controlling others. It's about reducing unnecessary mental loops. You'll find that most what-ifs are either unfounded or irrelevant once you seek clarity instead of assuming the worst. Self-reflection is another tool that works in tandem with action. Overthinking often stems from unprocessed experiences, unmet needs, or unresolved fears. Carving time to reflect, without judgment, is transformative. Ask yourself questions like, what am I afraid of? What patterns keep repeating? What do I actually want? When reflection is intentional and structured, it becomes problem-solving instead of rumination. You're training your mind to focus on solutions rather than dwelling on imagined threats. And finally, motivation plays a subtle but vital role. Overthinking thrives when you feel powerless, uncertain, or stuck. Strengthening motivation by connecting with your purpose, values, or long-term goals shifts your mind's focus outward. When your attention is on meaningful action, the urge to endlessly analyze diminishes. Even small wins build momentum. Completing a task, having a meaningful conversation, learning something new. Each victory proves to your mind that you are capable, adaptable, and resilient. Let's dive a little deeper into the daily life of an overthinker, because understanding it in real-world terms often makes it easier to see both the problem and the solution. Imagine waking up in the morning, and before you even get out of bed, your mind starts racing. You think about what happened yesterday, the things you didn't say, the mistakes you might make today, and the impressions others will form about you. Breakfast becomes a backdrop for mental debates. Each text message, email, or casual conversation is dissected in excruciating detail. You might feel physically tense without even realizing it. This is the daily reality of overthinking. It's exhausting, subtle, and relentless. But here's the insight. This isn't a flaw in your character. It's a signal that your mind is hyper, alert, deeply caring, and wired to anticipate outcomes. The problem is simply that it's applying that alertness to situations that don't require such intensity. Now, let's imagine how you could respond differently. You notice that spiral starting. Your mind is asking, what if? And instantly your body tenses. The first step is awareness. Acknowledge it. Say to yourself, here comes the overthinking again. My mind is trying to feel safe. Awareness alone interrupts the automaticity of the spiral. The next step is grounding. Something as simple as taking a few slow breaths, noticing sensations in your body, or even stepping outside to feel the sun on your skin. These small, concrete actions remind your mind that you are present, not in danger, and that control isn't about predicting every outcome. It's about being here, now, and acting intentionally. Overthinking also thrives on indecision. How often do you delay choices because you can't predict the outcome? How often do you replay scenarios endlessly instead of acting? The solution isn't rashness, it's structured decision-making. Limit your options. Set a time frame. Gather necessary information, then act. Even if the result isn't perfect, you're sending a clear message to your mind. I am capable. I can handle uncertainty. Over time, these micro-decisions accumulate, rewiring your nervous system and gradually reducing the instinct to overthink. Let's touch on a subtle but critical factor: overthinking and self-identity. Overthinkers often tie their self-worth to outcomes. If things don't go perfectly, they feel flawed or inadequate. But here's the truth: your worth isn't in your predictions, your decisions, or your ability to control outcomes. It's in your willingness to engage with life, to learn, and to adapt. This mindset shift is profound. Instead of asking, "What does this outcome say about me?" ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I move forward?" The first question traps you in judgment and rumination. The second invites growth and action. Another thing that helps is reframing mistakes. Overthinkers often see mistakes as catastrophic, proof that they're incompetent or failing. But in reality, mistakes are information, feedback, and opportunities for growth. Each mistake is a data point. The more you reframe errors as learning moments rather than threats, the less your mind will feel the need to obsessively predict and control even small missteps, like sending a message that's misinterpreted or making a work decision that doesn't go perfectly. Become manageable instead of paralyzing. Let's bring in an example from relationships, because social overthinking is so common. Imagine you're meeting someone new, and your mind is flooded with questions. Do they like me? Did I say the wrong thing? What impression am I making? This level of analysis is exhausting and often unnecessary. Instead, practice curiosity. Focus on listening, observing, and engaging authentically. Ask questions, notice their responses, and allow the interaction to unfold naturally. When you're curious instead of judgmental, your mind feels safer, less in need of controlling every moment, and interactions become more fluid and enjoyable. A practical reflection exercise I recommend is the thought audit. Set aside 10 minutes each day to write down the thoughts that keep recurring, especially those that make you anxious or uncertain. Then, categorize them: which are facts, which are assumptions, which are fears. Finally, ask yourself, what action, if any, can I take to address these thoughts? Often, you'll discover that most of your mental energy is going into things you can't control, or things that aren't worth the stress. Seeing this in black and white reduces the power of overthinking and allows you to focus on what actually matters. Here's another technique that many overthinkers overlook: scheduling worry. It sounds strange, but it works. Instead of allowing thoughts to invade your day or night constantly, set a 15 or 20-minute period to explore worries, plan, or problem solve. When intrusive thoughts appear outside that window, remind yourself, I'll address this during my worry session. Over time, your mind learns that it doesn't need to monopolize every moment, because there is a designated time for reflection and concern. Let's talk about motivation again. Overthinking often thrives when you feel powerless or uncertain. Connecting with purpose changes that dynamic. What drives you? What matters to you deeply? When your attention is on meaningful goals, the mind has less energy for endless what-ifs. Motivation doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it shifts your focus from fear to action. Each time you take a step toward your purpose, no matter how small, you reinforce your confidence and reduce the mind's compulsion to control every detail. Finally, let's touch on one of the most liberating insights: impermanence. Life is constantly changing. Relationships, opportunities, experiences, and even your own thoughts are temporary. Overthinking often tries to freeze time, predict outcomes, and avoid change, but that's impossible. Accepting impermanence, the idea that everything is transient, reduces attachment to imagined scenarios and outcomes. You realize that mistakes, fears, and anxieties are not permanent threats. They pass, and so do the moments that fuel overthinking. This mindset creates freedom. Your mind no longer needs to control everything, because you trust that change is natural, manageable, and often beyond your need for total prediction. Now, as we move toward the heart of this, I want you to picture something. Overthinking is like a constant storm inside your head. Waves of what if crash over you. The wind of doubt rattles every thought, and sometimes it feels like you're trapped in the eye of the storm with no escape. But here's the truth: storms don't last forever. You can't stop the rain from falling, but you can learn to navigate through it, to find shelter, to step into the calm when it comes. And the same is true for your mind. You can't stop thoughts from appearing. That's impossible. But you can choose how you respond to them. A practical way to start this journey is to treat your mind like a garden. Overthinking is like weeds growing uncontrollably. You can't stop weeds from appearing entirely, but you can decide which plants to nurture. Feed the thoughts that help you grow. Clarity, action, learning, and let the others fade. When a worry pops up, instead of engaging in a spiral, notice it, name it, and gently set it aside. Over time, your garden fills with intention instead of chaos. Your mind learns that control doesn't mean predicting every event. It means tending to what matters most. Here's another real life reflection. Think about a time when you overanalyzed a situation and worried unnecessarily. Maybe it was a message that went unanswered, a decision at work, or an interaction with someone close. In retrospect, did all those what-ifs actually prevent a problem? Often, the answer is no. Most of the energy spent overthinking doesn't change outcomes. It just creates tension. Recognizing this pattern repeatedly is liberating. It helps you see overthinking not as an unchangeable trait, but as a habit that can be gradually reshaped. And reshaping a habit requires repetition and kindness toward yourself. You will slip. You will fall into old spirals. That's normal. The key is not perfection, it's persistence. Each time you notice yourself overthinking and choose a different response, you strengthen your mental resilience. Each small success rewires the brain. Over time, overthinking shifts from being a default mode to an occasional visitor, a signal that you're aware of, not a dictator that controls your life. Let's return to the idea of control for a moment, because it's central to everything. Overthinkers crave control because it feels like safety. But here's a paradox. The more you try to control everything externally, other people, outcomes, circumstances, the less control you actually feel internally. True control comes from mastery over yourself, your attention, your response, your focus. By observing your thoughts, choosing actions intentionally, embracing uncertainty, and learning from experiences, you gain the only control that truly matters, the ability to navigate life with calm, clarity, purpose. Here's a simple but powerful daily practice to cultivate this control. Each morning, set an intention for how you will respond to uncertainty and overthinking. It could be as simple as, today, I will notice when my mind spirals and I will pause before reacting. Or, I will focus on action, not prediction. Then, when the day unfolds, and it will bring uncertainty, challenges, and surprises, you have a pre-established anchor. Your mind doesn't feel powerless. It doesn't need to grasp at control everywhere because you are actively directing your focus and energy toward meaningful action. Relationships, work, personal growth, all areas of life improve when overthinking is managed. Imagine having the ability to respond rather than react, to communicate without spiraling, to make decisions with confidence, and to enjoy the present moment without being hijacked by fear of the unknown. That's not fantasy. That's achievable. It begins with awareness, reflection, and small, consistent actions. And finally, let's close with a reflection that often changes everything. Your mind wants control, because it cares about your safety, success, and well-being. Overthinking is not your enemy. It's your mind's misguided attempt to help. When you shift from fighting it to understanding it, when you replace endless what-ifs with intentional actions, reflection, and trust, the storm inside quiets. You don't eliminate uncertainty, but you learn to move through it gracefully. You don't silence thoughts completely, but you regain choice over which thoughts guide your actions. You don't control the world, but you master the world within you. So here's the actionable takeaway I want you to leave with today. The next time you feel yourself spiraling into overthinking, breathe. Acknowledge that your mind is trying to feel safe. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me move forward, or is it keeping me stuck? Take a small, deliberate action that aligns with your values or goals. Repeat this process daily. Over time, your mind learns that you are capable, adaptable, and resilient. Control isn't about predicting every outcome. It's about responding to life with awareness, intention, and courage. And when you do this consistently, overthinking loses its power, your mind finds calm, and you reclaim the life you were overanalyzing instead of living. Remember, you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to prevent every mistake or predict every reaction. Life is messy, unpredictable, and beautiful. Your mind's desire for control is natural, but your ability to navigate uncertainty with calm and purpose, that's where true freedom begins. You have the tools, the awareness, and the capacity to practice this. Start today. Breathe, reflect, act intentionally. Overthinking may always appear, but now you have the power to choose how it shapes your life, or doesn't. And in that choice, in that conscious decision, you reclaim not just control, but peace.